The invitation had been both flattering and a touch peculiar. A last-minute plea from director Malcolm Blackwood to visit the remote set of his latest horror epic, The Obsidian Heart. He wanted me, Nicholas, the screenwriter, to perform a script polish, his words, not mine, on location. Something about the atmosphere, the authenticity. I suspected he just wanted me to witness the chaotic grandeur of his filmmaking firsthand, maybe even be inspired to write a sequel on the fly. The location was a godforsaken stretch of the Cumbrian Fells, miles from the nearest village, nestled amidst craggy peaks and mist-shrouded valleys. The kind of place that felt ancient, untamed, and perpetually on the verge of swallowing you whole. It was perfect for a horror film, of course, but it was also the kind of place that made your skin prickle even in broad daylight. I arrived in a battered Land Rover driven by a taciturn local named Gareth, whose primary mode of communication seemed to be a series of grunts and the occasional pointed stare. The track leading to the set was little more than a muddy rut, winding through desolate moorland until we finally broke through a thick curtain of fog to reveal a makeshift camp. Tents, trailers, portable generators humming like angry wasps, and a skeletal wooden structure that was clearly the centerpiece of the film, a decaying, Gothic manor house, built specifically for the shoot, complete with meticulously crafted fake decay. It was impressive, in a morbid sort of way. Malcolm, a man whose artistic temperament was as volatile as the Cumbrian weather, greeted me with a theatrical embrace, smelling of stale coffee and unbridled ambition. "Nicholas, my friend. You've made it! Isn't she magnificent?" He gestured at the manor with a flourish, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of pride and manic energy. "This place, it breathes, it inspires." I nodded, trying to ignore the persistent chill that seemed to seep into my bones, despite the heavy coat I wore. "It's certainly atmospheric, Malcolm." "Atmospheric? My dear boy, it's alive. The very ground beneath us sings with ancient horrors." He cackled, then clapped me on the back, nearly sending me sprawling. "Come, come. Let's get you settled. I've arranged for you to stay in one of the cottages nearby. Rustic, charming. Good for the soul, and for the script." My rustic, charming cottage turned out to be a small, stone dwelling, a little further away from the main camp than I would have preferred, tucked away in a hollow at the edge of a dense copse of ancient, twisted trees. It was quiet, certainly. Too quiet, perhaps. Later that evening, over a surprisingly decent meal in the communal mess tent, I started to hear the whispers. Crew members, their faces illuminated by the flickering generator lights, spoke in hushed tones about the screenplay. Not my brilliant prose, sadly, but a particular section of it. The heart chamber scene, as it was known. It was the climactic sequence of the film, where the protagonist finally confronts the malevolent entity residing within the manor. I'd poured my darkest imaginings into that scene, crafting descriptions of shadow and dread that I thought were genuinely unsettling. But the crew's unease wasn't about the unsettling nature of the scene itself. It was about something else entirely. "They say it's cursed," whispered a young production assistant, nervously stirring his tea. "That part of the script. The heart chamber." "Nonsense, Lily," scoffed a burly grip, though his eyes darted around the tent. "It's just a story to scare the new recruits." "But the accidents, Dave. Remember last week? The lights falling in the middle of the take? And then Mark, tripping on nothing, nearly breaking his neck right outside the manor door, exactly where it says in the script he falls after escaping the heart chamber." My ears perked up. I had written a scene where the protagonist, Mark, makes a desperate escape from the manor, tripping and falling near the entrance. A coincidence? Perhaps. "And the dreams," Lily continued, her voice barely audible. Everyone who reads that part of the script, especially if they spend time on set, they say they start having nightmares about a beating heart and a voice whispering their name. A shiver traced its way down my spine. I'd had a few restless nights since arriving, strange, disjointed dreams I couldn't quite recall, but a lingering sense of dread had followed me into waking. I dismissed it as the usual pre-production jitters and the isolation of the fells. Later, I found myself drawn to a grizzled old gaffer. His name was Frank, who had clearly seen a few things in his long career. He was nursing a mug of something strong and looking out at the swirling mist. Heard some chatter about a curse. I ventured, trying to sound casual. Frank grunted, taking a long swig. "I seen stranger things. This place, it's got a history. Not a good one." "And the script?" I pressed. "The heart chamber scene?" He turned his roomy eyes on me. "That section, it's resonant. Like it's tapping into something that's already here. This land, this manor. It's got its own memories, its own darkness. You write it down, and it wakes up." He looked at me pointedly. "You're the writer, aren't you? You penned those words. You're playing with fire, son. Old fires." I tried to laugh it off, but the sound felt hollow in my throat. "Just fiction, Frank. A story." He just shook his head, a grim set to his lips. "Some fictions are truer than others." The next few days were a blur of script revisions, production meetings, and a growing sense of unease. Malcolm was relentless, demanding changes, then changing his mind, then demanding the original version back. The crew was visibly strained, their earlier jocularity replaced by a quiet nervousness. Accidents continued to happen, minor ones, but frequent enough to fuel the growing whispers of the curse. A camera lens shattered. A prop axe mysteriously vanished, only to reappear in a locked storage trunk. Lights flickered erratically, even with a stable power supply. And the dreams. They became more vivid, more disturbing. I started to hear the beating of a heart in my sleep, a dull, rhythmic thud that vibrated through my very bones. And the voice. A faint, sibilant whisper, just beyond the edge of audibility, always trying to form my name. Nicholas. I spent more and more time at the manor, immersing myself in the atmosphere Malcolm so desperately wanted. The set designers had done an incredible job. Every creaking floorboard, every cobweb, every chipped paint flake felt authentic. The air inside was perpetually cold, even near the roaring portable heaters, and carried the faint scent of damp earth and something else. Something metallic and faintly sweet, like old blood. The heart chamber itself was located deep within the fabricated manor, a circular room with no windows. Its walls draped in heavy, dark tapestries that seemed to absorb all light. In the center, a raised dais. This was where the final confrontation was to take place. As I stood in that room, trying to visualize the scene, a profound sense of despair settled over me. It felt wrong, even violating. As if I were trespassing on something ancient and sacred, or perhaps, something ancient and malign. One afternoon, while I was alone in the heart chamber, poring over my script, a distinct thud echoed through the room. I froze. It sounded like a heavy object dropping. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Silence. Then, another thud, closer this time. It wasn't a drop. It was a beat. A slow, steady, powerful thump. My blood ran cold. It was the sound from my dreams. The beating heart. I tried to rationalize it. The wind. The old building settling. But the sound was too distinct, too rhythmic. And it was coming from the very walls around me. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking, and switched on the flashlight. Its beam cut through the gloom, dancing across the tapestries. Nothing. Just the imitation stone walls beneath them. But the sound persisted, growing louder, closer. It felt like the very air was vibrating with its presence. Suddenly, a whisper, clear as day, right next to my ear. Nicholas. I yelped, scrambling backward, tripping over a coil of prop rope. My heart hammered against my ribs, mirroring the sound around me. I bolted from the room, not caring how undignified I looked, running blindly through the labyrinthine corridors of the set, until I burst out into the late afternoon light, gasping for breath. I tried to tell Malcolm. He just laughed, attributing my terror to the immersive experience of his set design. Excellent, Nicholas. See? It's working. You're feeling it. Now go, write me something truly terrifying. But I wasn't feeling inspired. I was feeling terrified. The line between fiction and reality was blurring, and I was starting to suspect that Frank's warnings weren't just superstitious rambling. That night, the nightmares consumed me. I was in the heart chamber, but it wasn't the set anymore. It was real. The tapestries were gone, revealing raw, bleeding walls that pulsated with the rhythm of the heart. The air was thick with a sickly sweet scent, and the whisper was no longer just my name, but a guttural, ancient language that clawed at my sanity. I saw shadows writhing in the corners, coalescing into indistinct forms, reaching for me. And in the center of the room, on the dais, a pulsating, glistening mass. A true, monstrous heart, beating with an unholy life of its own. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. The rhythmic thudding from the manor echoed in my ears, even though I was in my isolated cottage. I knew then. The rumors were true. The curse wasn't just a crude superstition. It was real. And my words, my screenplay, had somehow invoked it. The heart chamber scene wasn't just a fictional setting, it was a conduit, a doorway that I had unknowingly opened. I had to see it. I had to go back to the manor, this time with a clearer head, to find what was happening. I couldn't shake the feeling that my own creation was turning against me, that my words were actively manifesting the horror. Under the cover of pre-dawn darkness, I made my way back to the set. The mist was particularly thick, clinging to the ground like a shroud, obscuring everything. The manor loomed out of the fog, even more menacing in the pre-dawn gloom. I crept inside, flashlight in hand, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The usual hum of the generators was gone, replaced by an unnerving silence. Only the steady thump-thump of the heart in the distance, growing louder with every step I took towards the heart chamber. As I neared the room, a faint, sickly green light began to emanate from beneath the door. I pushed it open, my breath catching in my throat. The scene before me was ripped straight from my nightmares. The heart chamber. But it wasn't a set anymore. The heavy tapestries were torn and shredded, hanging in ragged strips from the walls, revealing not fake stone, but a pulsating, glistening, organic material that seemed to breathe with a sickening life of its own. Veins, thick and dark, crisscrossed the walls, throbbing with the same rhythmic beat that now filled the entire room, vibrating through my very bones. The air was thick with the metallic, sweet scent of blood. And in the center of the room, on the raised dais, lay not a prop, but a vast, wet, grotesque, beating heart. It was colossal, larger than a man, its surface slick with an oily sheen, tendrils of dark matter extending from it, snaking towards the walls and disappearing into the pulsating mass. It pulsed with an unholy green light, illuminating the horror of the chamber. As I stared, transfixed, the whisper returned, stronger now, more distinct. It wasn't just my name. It was a cacophony of voices, ancient and hungry, whispering my name. But also other words, words I couldn't understand, yet they resonated with a terrifying familiarity. They were the words of my screenplay, twisted and distorted, given a horrifying, tangible form. You wrote us, Nicholas. You brought us forth. From the shadows that pulsed around the periphery of the room, indistinct forms began to stir. They were the shadowy entities I had imagined, but now they were real, coalescing into vaguely humanoid shapes, their eyes glowing with the same malevolent green light as the heart. They were reaching for me. My mind reeled. This wasn't a hallucination. This was real. My words, intended to conjure fiction, had somehow ripped a hole in reality, allowing something ancient and terrible to seep through. The heart chamber, the very core of my story, had become a literal heart, a living, beating organ of malevolence. The air grew colder, the scent of blood stronger. The whisper became a chorus, a maddening, swirling symphony of ancient hunger, all directed at me. Join us, Nicholas. Become part of the story. I stumbled backward, my legs refusing to obey, my breath ragged. The shadowy figures were advancing, their forms solidifying, their reaching hands now clearly clawed, skeletal. I turned and fled. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away from the horror I had unwittingly unleashed. The rhythmic thudding of the colossal heart chased me through the fake manor, its pulse echoing in my own chest. I heard the scuttling of many feet behind me, the sibilant whispers growing louder, closer. I burst out of the manor, gasping for air, into the swirling mist that had now grown even thicker, a suffocating blanket. I could still hear the beating, feel its vibration in the ground beneath my feet. I didn't stop running. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out, until I collapsed in the mud, sobbing, the relentless thump-thump of the monstrous heart echoing in my ears, a testament to the fact that the rumors were terrifyingly, horrifically true. I had written a horror story. And now, I was living it.
Play dead and I stay dead. Baby, you'll get sick of being